So I'm Margaret Fago, with the president of the Frank Betts Center for the Arts. And once a month we do an artist demo or talk. And so this month, we've got John Orr with his Orange Crate art. We also have an exhibit at the Frank Betts Center of his artwork that'll be going from this weekend, the 16th through the 30th. And all of the work that's in the exhibit is also on our website. And maybe either Chris or Roz could put our, so we don't have anybody else coming in. I'm gonna go ahead and introduce John. So John Orr, I met him through Dick Davis, who has been one of our staunch patrons, I would guess I would call him, through his foundation. He really likes to support various different types of artistic endeavors. And he had met John Orr and heard about his Orange Crate art collection. And we decided it would be fun to do an exhibit and also to do this talk tonight. So John is retired from being the Tansey professor of social ethics at the University of Southern California. He retired in 1998, but he's been very busy since then. He enrolled in Orange Coast College's photography program and focused on documentary photography. And then he also worked at the now closed Pasadena Museum of California Art as a volunteer. And he's going to be talking about his Orange Crate labels. So I'm going to let John take it from here.
Well, thank you, Margaret. It really is a pleasure to spend the evening with you and with members of the Betts Center. I want to start by citing Kevin Starr, the poet or the historian laureate of California for many years. Kevin Starr was writing an 8-volume series on the California Dream. And in those books, several times as he told his readers, pay attention to Orange Crate labels. Now that's surprising advice. But what he said was that Orange Crate labels became the bearers of the California Dream. Images that were printed on those labels were California Dream images. Of course, he then had to explain what's a California Dream image. And he said it's very, very simple. The California Dream is a whole bunch of ideas in a whole bunch of people's heads. Reasons why they chose to live in California, reasons why they wanted to raise their family in California. What makes California such an exceptional place? That's what the California Dream is. And he said, it's that dream that drove the development of California in the first half of the 20th century. I started being a collector of Orange Crate labels in 1973. I read an article in the LA Times about how orange groves were being replaced by housing tracts and business malls. And I wanted to talk to a person who was cited in that article. He said he was very, very sad because he thought that a beautiful era in California history was ending. Well, I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to reminisce with him. So I drove out to Claremont and I met him. Turned out he kept saying how sad he was, but actually I think at the same time, he was ecstatically happy because he had just sold his orange grove to a developer. We went into his home And we had a very nice conversation about the good old days. At one point, though, out of the blue, he said to me, I want to give you a collection of orange crate labels. Uh, he walked across the room, opened the closet door, and in that closet, there were what appeared to be thousands of orange crate labels. He picked out about 250 to 300 of these, and he said, take it, it's my gift. Well, I was ecstatic too, but not about being rich. I was ecstatic about being an owner of a collection fully developed of orange crate labels. I took them home and went over them, put the ones I liked best on our dining room table, and put the remainder, as many as I could, on the floor of our living room. For 3 weeks, I pored over these crates, these labels, over and over and over, because through the process, I was falling in love with it. It seemed sparkling to me. The colors on the labels were so brilliant. Uh, the graphic design was so clean, so direct, so straightforward, like words to the people. But what really attracted me were the dreamlike images of California, pictures of orange groves, pictures of the landscape, pictures of the culture, pictures of California residents. I loved those pictures. They moved me. They drew out emotions that I didn't know I had. I was so proud looking at these labels that I lived in California, in a place like that. Uh, I realized how deeply I felt about California, why my wife and I worked hard to get a job here after I got out of graduate school, why we wanted to raise our children here. Then I remembered my mother. My mother had been a teacher in Scott Bluff, Nebraska, on the western prairies of Nebraska, and boy, did she want to get out of there. Uh, she got a teaching job in Long Beach, California, and then later she told me she was influenced to move to California because she'd been looking at pictures of California. She felt that life would be more beautiful, more energetic, more meaningful out in California. I wondered, had my mother looked at pictures like California Dream Pictures on orange crate labels? I wondered, were they these labels? A few months later, I realized that in fact she probably had seen labels exactly like these, exactly located on orange crate labels, because she was in an area that was directly targeted by an advertising campaign in which orange crate labels played a very important role. The advertising campaign was initiated around 1880, and it lasted a long time, at least until World War II, maybe until 1955. The campaign was developed by the California Orange Growers Exchange and the Southern Pacific Railroad. Uh, the mission of the campaign was to raise the volume of exports from California of California's king fruit, the navel orange, and by the way, also the Valencia orange. It was also to promote tourism in California and to promote people thinking about wanting to become new residents of the state. Under the campaign, Sunset Magazine was launched. Sunset Magazine lasted for about a century. It showed pictures of California, it provided recipes using California meats and agriculture. It showed you how to garden with plants that were natural to California. Each area of California, particularly the cities and the dominant counties, were included in a series of brochures. Here's LA County up on the left-hand corner of the screen. There's a beautiful woman there standing in front of the San Gabriel Mountains right after a snowstorm. And right behind her, an orange tree full of bright oranges. On the other corner, you see state fairs and county fair events where oranges were being promoted. In the bottom right, you saw posters that were being published that provided information about the health virtues of consuming oranges. But front and center in this campaign was the Orange Crate label. Kevin Starr called it the heart, the soul, the emotional content of the great campaign. The Orange Grower Exchange had a vested interest in this campaign. They had realized that there was enormous opportunity in 1880 to expand the volume of oranges that they could send to the Midwest. Business could be better. And the reason was that in the 1880s and 1890s, refrigerated boxcars were being developed. For the very first time, agricultural products could be shipped to the Midwest safely. They also needed new orange ranchers. California was awfully sparsely populated. They needed people to come out and develop orange groves that could become wonderful landscape features of California. The other sponsor, the Southern Pacific Railroad, had just arrived. It was the first to Southern California that connected Southern California and the orange growing regions with the Intercontinental Railroad. They wanted to be the primary carrier of oranges as they were being shipped to the Midwest. They also wanted to fill their passenger train cars with tourists and with people who were moving to California. By any standard, this campaign with Orange Crate labels right at the center was an enormous success. Between 1885 and 1940, the national consumption of California oranges increased by an astonishing 80%, to an average of 40 oranges consumed each year by each American. In 1880, the population of the 6 counties of Southern California was only 50,000 people, 6% of the state's population. By 1930, there were almost 3 million residents. If Orange Crate labels were the heart and soul of the great campaign, Max Schmidt was the right man in the right place at the right time. Max Schmidt was an immigrant from Germany. He quickly acquired skills with lithography, and he founded in 1872 Schmidt Lithography Company in San Francisco. If you're going across the Bay Bridge into San Francisco, you can look off to the left as you arrive in San Francisco. There's Schmidt's clock tower. That's where his lithography company was located after the Great Fire of 1906. Schmidt felt he was ready to produce orange crate labels at the volume that was needed. But more importantly, he had very definite, strong ideas about how oranges should be marketed in the Midwest. They should be treated, he thought, as a luxury item. He pushed the orange growers to insist that each orange that was put into an orange crate should be wrapped in gift wrap. You didn't see the oranges if you were looking at an orange crate. They were all wrapped up. And what Schmidt wanted was the label to do the setting. He insisted on high printing standards, the best ink, images developed by artists. Orange crate labels should be developed with vivid colors to attract attention. He used lithography to produce his orange crate labels. In the early years, he used stone lithography, using limestone blocks that were imported from southern Germany. A flat surface was polished onto these stones, a flat surface created, and the images of orange crate labels were drawn or painted with grease paint or crayon-like pencils. Water was applied to the surface of the stone, and then grease-based ink was rolled over the surface. The image that had been drawn onto the lithographic stone transferred to a print. The areas where there was no grease image didn't. And so cleanly and with volume, orange crates labels could be developed. Later, he moved his work to zinc plates. The machine just above the picture of the zinc plates was a machine that would have been used at Schmidt Lithography in San Francisco. Really, the surface of a zinc plate was just like the surface of a limestone lithography. The same methods could be used, only chemicals had to be applied and salts to the surface, but the principles of lithography were the same. In 1907, the offset printing method was introduced. This was a very elaborate printing machine, and in a different form, it's still being used for commercial art. But again, the principles of lithography applied. The labels were printed and made in a lithography factory in Schmidt's facility. This factory operated 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day. This was assembly line production of California orange crate labels. Labels were produced by teams, which were made up of artists, stone and zinc preparers, and printing technicians. Particularly interesting, I think, were those teams of artists. Some of those artists specialized in landscapes, some in flowers, some in people, and usually designs were put onto the lithography plates by numbers of people. They were team artistic products. When the labels were printed, they were sent to packing houses all over the state of California, particularly in Southern California. The orange crate labels were glued to orange crates. Oranges were sorted out in different quality levels, and they were put into the orange crates. The labels and the orange crate filled with oranges were taken out of the packing house and located or loaded onto trains, which moved to central depots where the tracks were connected with the intercontinental railroad system. And off they went to in using refrigerated boxcars. They went directly to markets, particularly in the Midwest. In rural Midwest, oranges were mostly sold directly out of orange crates. So customers in the stores could readily see the orange crate labels. I have a friend who told me about a month ago that he remembers orange crate label vividly. He used to scheme to go to grocery stores because he liked to see the succession of orange crate labels that made their way through that store. He found them to be funny and interesting, exciting. And then he told me, by the way, they helped me make up my mind that I wanted to move to California. Orange crate labels made their way into homes, particularly in the Great Depression. They were used as bookshelves, dining room chairs. You can see where the labels had been torn off. Orange crate scooters. The variety of orange crate labels was very large. And that's because of the way that the images were selected. Of course, the images were produced by professional artists and professional lithography printers, but the subject matter was dictated by orange farmers, ranchers. They could put any reasonable image they wanted on their brand's orange crate label. Some put pictures of their own ranch. Some put pictures of their wives, their children, their horses, their dogs, their pigs. They could put anything on that they wanted. And so orange crate labels created a great mosaic that sometimes don't seem to make sense. But over the years, more consistently, the Orange Grove owners followed the advice of the California Orange Growers Exchange. Oranges, they were told, ought to be sold along with California. As much as possible, the selling should always be dual, the orange, California. These images complemented each other, made each other stronger. Here's a wonderful example of what I mean. Selling oranges and selling the California dream. An exaggerated orange, Cypress Point on Monterey Peninsula, a beautiful impressive image of the California landscape. The California dream included a lot of images of the natural landscape of California. Mountains, snow-covered mountains, flowers, lakes, birds, squirrels, you name it. California's landscape was represented in the American dream, in the California dream as astonishing. What was surprising, though, was the inclusion of such a great number of dream pictures related to orange groves. Something was going on there. Orange groves were impressive. They were viewed as changing the landscape in a beautiful way of the state of California. Orange groves dominated in Imperial County in the south, San Diego County, up through Riverside and across the foothills of the San Gabriel, the San Bernardino Mountains. They extended over to Ventura, up to Santa Barbara. The southern area of the San Joaquin Valley, and in our territory, the orange groves were located some around Sacramento, many around Placer County, and as far north as Butte County. Orange groves were pictured almost as exotic gardens of Eden, placed in exotic places, along the ocean, in the desert, along the hills of California. They were presided over by the goddess Pomona. Pomona was the Roman goddess of agriculture. But it wasn't just Pomona who had a hand. It was the orange growers themselves. They themselves, with their orchards, were viewed as miracle makers. They made the desert, or at least the Southern California's semi-arid landscape, into a garden. They had to divert waters from mountain streams and from the Colorado River, from lakes, from the Santa Ana River. Water was a miracle maker. Now, this is just a footnote here. So revered were the orange groves in the California dream that the railroad industry instituted orange grove tours on these trolleys operated by Pacific Electric and by Southern Pacific. Tourists got to step off the train and pick oranges. What I found interesting about this postcard, though, was how those tourists were dressed. It almost looks like they were preparing to go to a church. I wonder why that happened. Did they feel that orange groves were sacred or like Garden of Eden? I think so. Those tours took them to the water. I took them to the irrigation ditches, which made the orange grove possible. Kevin Starr, the historian, tells us that many of those tourists even brought little bottles to be filled with water from the irrigation ditches. Much as tourists to the Holy Land used to pour River Jordan water into little bottles and take them home. I hadn't expected to find such a celebration in American Dream pictures as were there, pictures of a new pattern or a new idea of what citrus suburbanization could be. Here's a picture of a new citrus community in Riverside County, Europa, on the northern part of Riverside County. The orange groves go directly into the city. Uh, the city boasts a beautiful architectural bridge. Uh, it was a beautiful place. Nearby Riverside, a community of about 5,000 people, had wide boulevards lined by palm trees and eucalyptus trees from Australia. Uh, Beside them, just beside them, were orange groves. Uh, the Mission Inn was built there, a world-class hotel visited by royalty, by presidents of the United States. Pat Nixon and Richard Nixon had their honeymoon there in the Mission Inn Hotel. California's Pasadena was even more marvelous. Just below the Colorado Bridge was an orange grove. The Colorado Bridge was and is and continues to be magnificent. Just off to the right of the bridge was the fabled Orange Grove Boulevard, where wealthy business families from the Midwest could come out and live the life of snowbirders. Wealthy ranch owners could live on Orange Grove Boulevard. You see that in Pasadena, you have an extremely interesting place. Trams were built so you could travel to the top of the San Gabriel foothills. There was a restaurant up there that had been built. You could stand in front of the restaurant and look across the Los Angeles basin and see as far as Catalina Island. And then, of course, in this citrus community dominated by wealthy businessmen and ranch owners, the Rose Bowl was built, and the orange related, at least for a number of years, Rose Parade was created. The wealthy people who lived in Pasadena could congratulate themselves for living there, particularly when television was created. They could comfort themselves by knowing that there were Midwesterners sitting in the snow or in the cold of the snow and see these images of beautiful weather in Pasadena. It takes about a half an hour to an hour to travel from Pasadena to Riverside and then into Orange County. In that very small space, I could count 7 institutions of higher education, liberal arts colleges, agricultural training colleges. I suspect that this is the most intense concentrations of colleges and universities, far more than probably every other place in the United States. It was an amazing concentration of colleges. By easy train ride from Pasadena, about 10 minutes, you could go on the streetcar or on a train into Los Angeles. There were cultural programs there, theaters, music, the new University of Southern California, exotic Hollywood. In the 30s or the late 20s, the LA Coliseum was built, and you could go and see world-class events. And then there were job-creating industries. The aviation industry was developing. The oil industry offered jobs about 30 miles away in the LA port area. The California dream envisioned that the dominant population in California would be Midwesterners. Frankly, that troubles me as I looked at those orange crate labels. Was this racism on the part of the growers who were envisioning the ideal population of this beautiful state? Well, I suspect that racism was not an issue at that time, but what was the fact that the Midwesterners were already established in the orange growing area. As early as 1890s, Midwesterners had already replaced Easterners as California's principal population group. Midwesterners apparently wanted to flee to California. They were having problems with the prosperity of their farms, and particularly farming families wanted to find their way out into a more gentlemanly, more prosperous kind of farming around the orange groves. Here's a picture from Long Beach, the Iowa picnic. Pasadena for a while put on Nebraska picnics. Orange Grove area was already Midwestern area. And the point made in the California dream was that Midwesterners could come out here and live their conservative Midwestern lives easily in an unthreatened way. Aksarben, that was code language. That was Nebraska spelled backward. If you lived in Southern California as a Midwesterner, your life would be more productive, more fun, more sophisticated, more profit producing than was possible in the Midwest. And life in a Midwestern citrus growing suburb could be very active. You could easily by railroad or by streetcar go to polo fields in San Bernardino area or in Santa Barbara. You could lope around beautiful sand beaches in Southern California. You could play tennis and other sports. Life was healthy, energetic, active in Southern California. Kids had tan. Southern California people used to congratulate themselves that their kids were not milky white as Midwestern children were during the winter season. There was a problem, however, with that California dream dominated by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. The problem was that the orange growers idealized a multicultural character to their beautiful state of California. They lived with minority populations. Vietnamese, Japanese, Chinese, Indians, Mexicans were all employed as ranch hands, working to pick oranges, working in the packing houses. The orange grove industry in California needed a stable workforce. They needed a workforce that lived in the area because the ranches provided work all year long. And so the ranchers wanted to live happily and peacefully in communities dominated by their workers or adjacent to the citrus communities. How do you bring together multiculturalism with WASP domination? Well, the novelist Helen Hunt Jackson provided the answer. In her novel, Ramona, she portrayed violence that had been directed toward Indians, but she also projected an idyllic life in the beginning days, in the Spanish-dominated days of California. She pictured missions as places where jolly, wise monks, civilized Indians who coveted the opportunity to become civilized. The history was re-edited, of course, because the missions had virtually enslaved Indians. Helen Hunt Jackson idealized the cultural tradition of the Spanish settlers of early California. There was Spanish music, Spanish dances, Spanish religious rituals. Charles Loomis, through his magazine, The Land of Sunshine, offered another way of reconciling the Caucasian domination of the Orange Grove area with minority populations. He talked about the California culture as a fusion culture where people from different cultural origins or geographical origins could live together in peace and in mutual respect. Orange Grove owners picked up this theme from The Land of Sunshine. Indians were pictured in their natural, from the point of view of the owners, in their natural settings. There's an enormous number of Indian pictures in orange crate labels. But notice, Indians were never in California dream pictures imagined to be neighbors or workers that had achieved success in the orange grove industry. It was almost like they were a form of entertainment. Indian dances at the Mission Hotel. Pictures of the Chinese and Japanese never pictured the fishing camp down in the Bay Area of Southern California. They never pictured the Japanese community that was deported and incarcerated during World War II. It seems that instead of social justice issues or living together in mutual justice, had to be omitted. And these are pictures that encourage cultural appreciation. Now, of course, an advertising medium like the Orange Crate label would have a hard time fighting the fights of social justice. Maybe as far as they could go would be a mutual appreciation of diverse cultures. But finally, what that did was to idealize the experience of minority cultures in theaters like the Padua Hills Theater, or in restaurants, or in theaters. By the 1950s, orange crate labels with their California Dream images went into decline. Taking the place of these dream images was an intense interest and pride in lettering and logo design. After I secured my collection of orange crate labels, I tried to find artists who had done these labels. I had heard that some of them were printed up in the industrial district of Los Angeles. So I went looking for them, and I found one, the artist who produced the Circle series of orange crate labels. He didn't see these labels as a matter of art. He didn't see these labels as a way of selling California. What he was proud of, he said over and over, that he had learned to use airbrushes to create orange crate labels. In 1955, the production of orange crate labels came to an end. Now labels were printed directly on cardboard boxes. Wooden crates disappeared. The furniture use of orange crate labels went away because there weren't wooden crates around. Farewell, farewell, orange crate art. Before I end our session to get this evening, I simply want to ask, was that really art we were talking about? Is our orange crate labeled dream images really art? My answer is yes, they are. They are commercial art, art produced for commerce, art displayed in the marketplace. In the last few years, museums of art have argued that California tradition of art, the California legacy of art, is simply different than the legacy in New York City. And for myself, speaking for myself, I don't know why that doesn't mean orange crate art should be included in our art legacy to be displayed in art museums. I'll end today's comments by simply saying that the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco have come to the same conclusion. At the Legion of Honor and the DeYoung Museum share storage space for their collections. And in those collections, there's a large file of orange crate labels. As far as I know, they've never been displayed. But lots of things are collected by art museums and have never been displayed. I hope at some point they will display orange crate labels as art exhibits. I hope that Oakland Museum, University of California, Davis, and Crocker Museum will follow the example of the Fine Arts Museums of California. And within, With that being said, uh, I just want to express special thanks to the support given by the Betts Center for the Arts and the Richard Davis Charitable Trust. Back to you, Margaret.
Okay, I need to get my face back up here. So the one question that's sitting here, Chris Warrenberg, by the way, who is our marketing director, emphatically said, yes, they are art. So you have at least one more person on your side saying Orange Crate art is art. And then
Dinner for each other and appreciate each other's points of view.
yes, definitely. Roz Harper was asking, is there a complete collection of the labels in one location that you know about?
No, there isn't, but there are some very large collections that are available to be checked out. University of California in Berkeley has a fairly large collection of Orange Crate labels. The Pomona City Library has a very large collection. And maybe even some of these art museums that I referred to have collections. I just don't know about them. But in answer, no, they aren't. When Orange Crate labels first became available to collectors, the collectors got them for a song because they were viewed as being not very valuable. They were being sold to antique stores and curio shops, and they were being encased in plastic for use as table mats. They were being dumped in dumpsters. So I'm not surprised that early on there was never an effort to get some kind of central collection.
I just want to say, I remember as a child loving to see the Orange Crate art and valuing those orange crates as well.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I first came to California to work at Stanford as a nurse, I was working at, I would travel with some friends and we would see orange groves all over the place. And then when I came back and 30 years later and worked for Kaiser, they were building their new Santa Clara Medical Center on one of the last orange groves in California. And it really made all of us very sad, to see a hospital, I mean, not see a hospital go up, but to see one of the last orange groves taken down. It was
1930s, 1940s, orange ranching was the second largest industry in California, only after aviation.
Hmm.
Of course, oil drilling moved on up too.
so now where most of the oranges are produced in Florida.
No, there are still orange growing areas in California. There are orange groves around various parts of Southern California and in the southern San Joaquin Valley. Uh, when we drove up from Pasadena to visit our family in Danville, we always passed by and paid attention to a large citrus growing area along Highway 5.
Hmm. Hmm.
They always appeared to me there in the San Joaquin Valley as a source of great pride. They were carefully laid out, these orange groves, and they were carefully labeled so that people driving by knew that these were tangerines and not oranges or lemons.
Hmm. Interesting. Wow.
So Mike Gifford, I see you have your mic on. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to tell John, thanks. A really, really interesting presentation, and thanks, Dick, for his involvement and putting the stuff to helping get us put the stuff together. It was really interesting.
Really
And
was, yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, and I can probably share that when I was a kid growing up in the late 60s and early 70s. I used to spend time in the San Joaquin Valley with a lot of my relatives out there in Bakersfield and McFarland and Tulare and all that area out there. And a lot of my family are my cousins and uncles. They're ranchers out there, and we used to spend a lot of time out in the orange groves, just rows and rows and rows. And I can remember when earthquakes would happen. We would run out on the porch and look, and you could see the rolling trees, and as the earth kind of rumbled and moved, you could see the trees moving. And we used to always, whenever we felt an earthquake, we'd run out there and watch, and you could see the tops of the trees, orange groves.
That I was moved by. The smells were so beautiful.
Yeah.
By the way, let me mention that if you want to look up the collection held by the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, there's a virtual tour you can take, or a virtual way of recovering. And to find them, you've got to go not to the category Orange Grove labels. You've got to go to the category Schmidt Lithography Company.
Ah. Yeah. Well, I have friends back east who collect, labels from various cultural events, and others that lived through the 60s as I did, that collected all of the, the Jerry Garcia Grateful Dead posters that came out, right? So, this doesn't seem, and there are plenty now that are collecting the wine, festivals and stuff, labels from that. And, I would submit it's probably all art,
Oh, I think so too. What's the definition of art, for heaven's sakes?
Yes.
It changes.
Yeah.
By the way, for Easterners, it's interesting that the model for Max Schmidt's lithography factory that produced most, of, not all, of these orange grape labels, Courier Knives provided the model. That's how Courier knife prints were produced by lithography.
Huh, interesting. Wow. Well, it's fascinating. Really very interesting talk.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Getting ready for this presentation, I just learned so much, and
Oh, yeah.
so enthralled and emotionally involved in these images. This is my state. And these orange growers, so what I saw, it so disappoints me now that people are leaving California, and the California dream seems to be in eclipse. Too bad, because there was something very rich in having kind of visions like they provided.
It sounds like, John, a great idea for one of our exhibits next year, the California Dream.
That is a good idea. Yeah.
Let's keep
Get that on
drinking.
the list.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Margaret. Wonderful story.
Thank
Yep.
you.
And Margaret, will this presentation be posted on the website for
It
the?
will. I've been recording it, and once I do the little bit of editing to clean up what I need to at the very beginning and maybe at the very end, we'll get it on the website. So by the end of the weekend, I'll have it up. And
Okay.
so anyone who wasn't able to make it tonight, if you know someone that probably would have liked to have seen it, it'll be on the website.
Well,
Good.
clean up some of my slips of lips. I learned this evening that I'm not used to talking during the pandemic.
I know, we don't talk that much.
To navigate the world that's out there. Yes.
Wow.
Okay, everybody, thank you for showing up, and I hope you enjoyed this, and thank you so much, John. This was wonderful to hear this. Yeah, maybe I'll even be able to make a thumb drive of it. We can have it at the center during your show. I'll see whether that works out. So
Oh,
we'll,
that'd be great. Yeah.
we'll talk to you later.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
All right,
Thank you very
everybody,
much.
good night.